Stop the recording. I think it's recording. Right. Let me pin this one, make it bigger. And you see I'm see over here preparing some Christmas, New Year presents, because we actually celebrate New Year rather than Christmas. And in our culture, Santa actually comes for New Year rather than for Christmas. And in our language, the Christmas tree is actually called the New Year tree. So we still have all those holidays, where is it, in front of us. I'm making up these boxes and wrapping. So that'll be pretty cool. That's the biggest holiday of the year for us, the New Year. So that's nice, 11 of us. Let's continue. Last subtopic, we're going to talk about profitability index. Okay. And for profitability index, there is no simple formula in Excel. We don't have a choice of just hit equals, PI, whatever. Okay. It's going to take a few steps to calculate profitability index. So maybe you want to take notes. Okay. So before we jump into the profitability index, let's check attendance. I think I'm recording this. Okay. In the next 30 seconds, can you type your student IDs? One, two, three, four. Only 4 so far. We're 11 here, yes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right. Unpin myself here. Right. Okay, the first 3 or 4 minutes of the video, attendance over here. Right. Now we can jump into the profitability index. Where was it? Where was it? Where was it? It was here. Okay, let's see. Am I sharing? No, I'm not sharing. I need to share. Let's share the screen. Now I'm sharing. Here's the profitability index. Right. Do you guys see the profitability index in front of you? Am I sharing correctly? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, good. Next, let's have a look at another investment criterion, the profitability index. Profitability index is basically a measure of benefits per initial investment costs. So, of course, in this case, if we're looking at the benefits per costs, we are going to have a look at a ratio. And profitability index does take into account the time value of money. Looking at the formula of the profitability index, it's actually somewhat similar to the formula of NPV. For NPV, remember, we sum up all of the discounted cash flows starting from time t0. Here instead, we sum up all of the discounted cash flows starting with time t equals to 1, and the initial cash flows in time 0, they actually go in the denominator. All of the sum of the discounted cash flows from T1 is divided by the original investment. That gives you the profitability index. For the NPV, instead, we subtract the original costs from the sum of all of the positive cash flows. So there is a bit of a similarity here. Whenever NPV is greater than 0, it means all of the future positive cash flows are greater than the initial costs. For profitability index, the same situation when all of the future positive cash flows are greater than the initial costs, the numerator is greater than the denominator, in that case the profitability index is going to be greater than 1. So whenever NPV is greater than 0, profitability index is greater than 1. Hence, our decision rule for the profitability index is we accept the project if profitability index is bigger than 1. In case if profitability index is equal to 1, then all of the future discounted cash flows together are equal to the initial costs. In that case, NPV is equal to 0, and the project doesn't actually make any money. Yes, the project doesn't lose money either, but why would you invest into something that doesn't make any money, taking into account the time value of money? Okay, let's have a look at an example. Here's our example. Let's say we have a project lasting for 12 years and the cash flows are starting with negative cash flow of 23,000, the original costs, and some future cash flows starting from 2,000 all the way up to 5,000 and then down to 2,000 by year 12. The discount rate, or let's say the required rate of return for this project with the given level of risk is 5.5%. I got a couple of questions here. First, I have to calculate the profitability index, and secondly, decide whether we accept or reject the project. To calculate this, I first want to add one more column, and that's going to be my discounted cash flows. That's going to be equals, click on the cash flows, divide by 1 plus the required rate of return into the power of the number of years. Go back to the discount rate. Click anywhere around this discount rate, hit F4 for a fixed reference so that when you copy the formula, the reference to the discount rate doesn't copy down as well. Hit enter, copy, and we have our discounted cash flow. As you've seen in the formula, profitability index is going to be the ratio of the sum of the discounted cash flows starting from year 1, so all of these positive cash flows, divided by the original cash flow, and then we're going to ignore the negative sign, so negative is going to give me a positive value over here, which in this case is bigger than 1. So we accept the project because the profitability index is greater than 1. So generally, as you see, the profitability index is a relatively good investment criterion. Unlike the payback period, the average accounting return, it does take into account the level of risk, it does take into account the time value of money and so on, but it can still conflict with NPV sometimes. Let's have a look at another example. Let's have a look at this example of two projects. The original project as in the previous example, and another project also lasting for 12 years with the initial investment of 98,000 and cash flows going from 8,000 all the way up to 16,000 and then later down back to 8,000. Let's say everything else is the same about the project. The risk level is relatively similar, so the required rate of return is also 5.5%. Let's try to calculate the profitability index and NPV for both of these projects, see if there is any conflict. So let's add another column for discounted cash flows. And we're going to use the same formula, equals, hit on the cash flow, divide by 1 plus the discount rate, hit F4 for fixed reference, and into the power of number of years. Copy, and you have your discounted cash flow. To calculate the profitability index, again, take the ratio of the sum of all of the discounted positive cash flows starting from year 1, divided by the original investment. And let's add the negative sign here so we actually ignore the original negative sign. And we have 1.11. So profitability index equal to 1.11. So 11% profitability on this project. Looks like it's less than the 33.5% for the original project. We can accept this project because profitability index is greater than 1. But if we have to choose between one of these two projects, if these two projects are mutually exclusive, if we cannot accept both of them, then there might be some problem. Let's calculate NPV. Equals NPV, open the brackets, rate, comma, and remember the value starting from cash flow number 1, and we just take into account the regular cash flows because the formula discounts by the rate automatically, and we have to remember to add the initial costs by hand. On the left, NPV is equal to 7,700. On the right, NPV, same rate, different values, plus the initial investment by hand. On the right, we have 10,700 in NPV. So there is a bit of a conflict. The profitability index suggests that we should choose the project on the left because the profitability index 1.335 is bigger than the profitability index on the right, only 1.11. But again, in any sort of conflict, NPV always wins. The project on the right generates more than $10,000 in additional value to the firm, whereas the project on the left generates less than $8,000 in additional value to the firm. That's like a profitability index suggests we should choose the project on the left because the profitability is 33.5%. Looks like 33.5% is bigger than the profitability of 11%. But 11% is earned on a bigger investment of nearly 100,000. 11% of 98,000, that's initial investment, will give you more than 10,000. But 33%, 33.5% of a smaller project of initial costs of 23,000 will give you less than 8,000. That is the source of the problem. When you just look at the percentages, it looks like 33.5% is bigger than 33.5% is better than 11%, but 33.5% of a small amount is still small amount. But 11% of a big amount is bigger amount. That is the source of this conflict between profitability index and NPV. The same for internal rate of return, because it also shows the rate of return, the percentage you're earning on the project, regardless of the dollar values, right? But a bigger percentage of a small project is still small profits in the dollar terms, right? So that's the last subtopic. Stop sharing. So today, so far, we've covered modified internal rate of return. We reviewed the NPV profile and profitability index. That finishes our last chapter for the semester. Okay. Now jumping into Moodle. Sometime later on this week, I'll try to post these videos on Moodle so you can review in future if you want to prepare for the exams. Next week, we'll do the preparation properly. Next week, I'll prepare different practice problems for you for all of the different chapters we've covered so far. That'll be a preparation for the final exam. Again, as I said, the final exam week 18. Okay. Questions? Any questions today? If not, I'll go back to wrapping the presents for New Year. Right, you guys. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.